Hello, so today we're going to be doing a bit of a cooking tutorial. We're going to be making some puff pastry cinnamon swirls and some other pastry treats. The first thing you need to do, if you haven't already, is please go and make sure you wash your hands thoroughly with soap and warm water. Make sure you have clean nails, you wash your knuckles and your thumbs, as you've probably seen a lot of on the news and the telly recently. Once you've done that, then come back and I will talk you through all of the ingredients we need. So food ingredients to start with, the main thing you'll need is some ready rolled puff pastry. It doesn't matter on the brand, this was just the one that was on the shelf in the shop. So we've got this one. When you're using this, it is really important to make sure you leave it out of the fridge for about 5 minutes just to get to a sort of room temperature, otherwise when you unroll it you get cracks in the pastry. That's not really a problem, but it's easier to work with when it's been sitting in the kitchen for a while. Then to make our swirls, I'm going to be using some of this Biscoff Lotus spread. And if you're going to make the cinnamon type swirls, you'll also need some ground sweet cinnamon. You can get most of these in either the baking or the like the spice aisles in supermarkets, and a bit of icing sugar for dusting. If you want to make some of the other ones that I'm going to be using, there's some chocolate spread or some jam. Okay. You'll also need, I use a pizza cutter to cut the pastry because I find it's easier than trying to do it with a knife. It's a lot smoother. And then you'll also need something to spread the Lotus Biscoff spread with, so either a knife or a spoon, and then a fork for some of the chocolate parcels we'll do later on. If we just move over here, I've got these muffin cases which I've just lined with little fairy cake cases. You don't need to use these, but I find the cinnamon rolls neater when you do. They'll still taste exactly the same if you just put them on like a bit of baking parchment, but sometimes they just fall over a bit in the oven, but they'll still taste lovely. Okay, so I'll move this out of the way. The first thing we are going to do is to very carefully unroll the pastry. So we're going to leave it on its paper sheet. That makes it easier to transfer later. And we're just going to unroll it. So can you see here where it's colder in the middle? This is what I meant with the pastry just cracks a little. It won't cause any problems, but it's just easier to work with when it's not like this. Okay, so because I'm going to start with my cinnamon swirls, I need to first cut probably maybe an inch and a half maybe wide strips like this. Don't do them too wide because otherwise they take a bit longer to cook, and what tends to happen is the outside edge of the pastry burns a little and the inside stays a bit soggy, so try to do thin strips like I'm doing here. And I'll do 6 because I've got 6 paper cases, but do however many you want. Okay, so once I've done that, there's the next step. I've got 2 jars just because I've started using one. These are a bit of a family favourite, so it never lasts long in this household. Okay, so all you do is you get your knife and you scoop out some of the spread. Oh, really running out of this jar. And then you evenly spread down the strip of pastry that you've cut with the pizza cutter. Now this doesn't have to be perfect, so just make sure there aren't massive gaps where it's missing. But it doesn't need to be right to the edges. Okay, so that will do for that one. And then I'm just going to show you. So if you then lift up the end and just fold it over, try not to squish it too much because that squashes the butter and the flour together, and then the pastry doesn't become as puffy. We want it to be nice and flaky pastry. And you just, with your fingers, you just push and it rolls up into like a spiral shape, like a chocolate Swiss roll or something like that. So once you've done that, you should have something like this, and that is then ready just to pop into your cake case. Okay, so it doesn't fill up the whole of the cake case at the moment, but that doesn't matter because they will expand in the oven as they cook. Okay, so what I'll do is I will continue to do these, but I won't make you watch me make 6 of them. So I'm going to show you the next stage. So the next ones that we quite like are chocolate parcels, and they look a bit like little raviolis, but they're stuffed with chocolate spread. So to do this, again, I'm going to use the pizza cutter because it's nice and easy to cut. And I'm going to make a rectangle. Okay, so it's quite a long rectangle. We're going to put a spoon of chocolate spread here and then fold it over on itself. So I shall demonstrate. Now it depends on the size of your rectangle to how much chocolate spread you need to put in. And I'm going to use another spoon just to push it off. Okay, so can you see here I've left about a centimetre, or just a bit more than a centimetre actually, gap from the edges, because if I don't leave enough then it all squidges out of the sides when I fold it over. So we're on to the next step, which is the folding over. So I'm going to take the edge that doesn't have the chocolate spread on it, I'm going to lift it up, and then I'm going to fold it onto the other side. Okay, and that's when my fork comes into place. So I'll gently push down the edges just to make sure that chocolate stays in the middle and doesn't leak out the edges. And then I'm going to kind of crimp all the way around the edges. And then it's probably easier to turn it around. And this will just make sure that the chocolate is sealed inside the pastry and then doesn't leak. If it leaks a bit, it doesn't matter, but this just stops the goodness leaving. Otherwise you'll just be eating pastry. And then I'm just going to do this side as well, just to make it look a bit prettier than leaving one side plain. But you don't need to because it's already sealed. Okay, and then I'm just going to poke it in a little cross, mostly for decorative effect. And then I'm going to scoop it onto my baking paper. Okay, so that's our chocolate one done. Now the next one is a little more complicated. So I'm going to be making a jam pinwheel. Okay, so to do this you'll need a fairly largish square. The bigger these are, the easier they are to do. So I'll cut off that bit there, we don't need that. I can make another chocolate pouch later. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut into the middle, not all the way. I'll show you roughly how far. So we're just going to, we'll leave a gap in the middle. We're just going to do this with all of the corners. Again, this doesn't need to be perfect. Okay. And then this bit gets a bit tricky, so I will demonstrate with lots of the corners so that you've got a chance to watch. So then you're going to pick up one of the corners that you've cut, and you are then going to fold it across so that you've got a little bit that pokes out. Okay, so I'm going to take this corner and fold it across so a little point pokes outwards. Okay, I'm going to do that with each of those corners. Okay, then you can see that I have a few triangles still poking out, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold these in to meet the start of our other folds. Can you see? In and in. So this one's a bit more extravagant, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a blob of jam in the middle here. We're not going to seal the jam because it's quite nice actually. In the oven the jam gets thicker and it goes kind of sticky, and that's quite nice. So I'm just going to put quite a big dollop because there's quite a lot of pastry there. Put a little bit there as well. And this will spread out a bit in the oven and go stickier. a bit like, you know when you have those jammy Danish pastries? It'll go a bit like that. Now this one, because it's a bit larger and it's a bit more delicate, you might need like a fish slice or a larger spatula to scoop this up. It might be worth asking an adult or an older sibling to help you with this part, because otherwise it could get a bit messy. So, just going to slide this underneath, like that, and then pop this on my baking tray. Ooh. Okay, so as you notice, I've left a gap between the chocolate pouch and our jam pinwheel because these do expand in the oven. I don't want them to merge together. Okay, so when I finish making these swirls, I'm going to put them into a preheated oven of 160 degrees for about 20 minutes, but this will vary depending on the size of your pastries. So it's a good idea to get an adult to keep checking, and after every 5 minutes or so, just have a look. When they start to go a bit golden brown, and the swirls in particular, they puff up and start to fill the cases, that's when they are about done. But it's a bit of a judgment call really. So I shall see you in a bit when I'm taking them out of the oven. Okay, so I think the pastries are about ready now. So I'm going to take my oven glove and have a check. It's probably a good idea for parents to do this, or carers at the moment, because it is quite hot. So I'm going to turn the oven off first, and then carefully, oh, yeah, they're looking ready. So with my oven glove, I'm just going to pull out the tray and put it on a heat-proof surface so it doesn't burn the worktop. And I'm going to leave them there just to cool, so they're not too hot when I'm finishing them. Okay, so the pastries have cooled down now. I've taken them out of the cases and I've just put them on the top of the kitchen cabinet, ready to decorate. So all I'll need is some icing sugar and my ground sweet cinnamon for the cinnamon swirls. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a little spoon. You can use a teaspoon, I just have a smaller one, I find it a bit easier. And you're going to unscrew this. Let's get a little spoon of the ground sweet cinnamon. And then what I do is I just tap the spoon gently, so that little amounts of cinnamon sprinkle on top without it being too much. Obviously do this to your taste. If you really like cinnamon, then obviously put on a bit more. If you're not a fan of cinnamon, you can leave this step out entirely and just have the Lotus spread swirls. So you don't have to put this on, but I quite like it. It tastes almost Christmassy. Okay, so that should be enough cinnamon for the way I like them. And then I'm going to take another spoon, so a fresh one, so I'm not going to dip a dirty spoon into the ice and sugar. And I'm going to do the same process with ice and sugar on top. Okay, so again I hold the spoon above the cinnamon and I just tap it gently so little bits of ice and sugar fall off the spoon without going too clumpy. If you do this when they're warm, it will kind of melt into the cinnamon swirls. That's not a problem, it just depends on whether you want this on there for the taste or for the decoration, but you can keep adding more. Okay, then if we look at the strawberry pinwheel, I'm going to do a little bit of ice and sugar, the same technique, just in the middle, just for decoration, that's all. And then with the little bit of pastry that I had left over, I just put a tiny bit of jam in the middle and folded the corners in. Now they'll unfold in the oven, but that's okay. So I'll just do the same as I did with the pinwheel. And then this is the chocolate pouch, or a little chocolate ravioli, and I'll do the same there. If you have cocoa powder or something, you could do that. Alternatively, with the cinnamon swirls, if you made the icing sugar up into icing, you could then drizzle it over the top, and that would probably be quite nice actually. I've not tried it before, but I've seen them in shops like that, so you could give it a go. Another thing to remember is that you don't just need to use these things. If you don't like these ingredients, but maybe you like peanut butter, or you like that marshmallow fluff stuff you can get in jars, you could use any of those fillings. Also with the chocolate pouch, If you put a couple of squares of ordinary chocolate in the middle, that's quite nice too. But I wouldn't put them on top of the pastry and leave it open because the chocolate dries out in the oven, has a bit of a strange texture. But if you want to experiment a bit more with pastry, often on the pastry wrapping they have recipes at the back, so making pies or sausage rolls. So I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. Have fun, remember to wash your hands and stay safe when using ovens and sharp equipment.